What's up, Packer family? Happy Sunday. Welcome into the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Hope you enjoyed the draft weekend. To me, always one of the best times of the year. First of all, you kind of get to do the prep work beforehand, then see who gets selected, and then you kind of get to unwrap some of those presents afterward, which is something that I'll be doing a very deep dive of over the course of the next week, maybe a little bit more, but super excited to kind of dive into these draft picks a little bit more over that time period. I'm going to obviously be discussing day 3 of the draft primarily today. I'm not going to be doing deep dives on a lot of these guys. First of all, there's a lot of people to go through. Second, some of them I just haven't had certainly a chance to watch as much tape as I would like on some of them. So as we go on again throughout the course of the next week and a half, I will promise you I will be going into very huge, great detail into some of these prospects and breaking down every play that I can find on tape on all 22 to give you guys better clarity as to what these players are going to bring to the table. Before we get to the draft, though, today, again, still that same gray cloud that's kind of hovering overhead. I don't want to spend too much time on Aaron Rodgers today, but I do want to discuss a couple things really quick. I think the first one that I can't really believe needs to be said, but apparently it still needs to be said. This is very real. There seems to be this idea out there for some people that this is just a big media, frenzy, something that the media has created or piled on top of. The president of the Green Bay Packers, Mark Murphy, put out his own question and answer session and made a statement in that stating basically how real this is. That they have, went down himself, Brian Gutekunst, Matt LaFleur on multiple occasions to go and try to basically convince Aaron Rodgers to come play for Green Bay again. This is very real. Brian Gutekunst answered questions all weekend about this. Matt LaFleur answered questions on Sunday about this. No denial. When Aaron Rodgers talked to Mike Tirico, his comment was not, this is not real. He said he regrets that it came out. He regrets that, that everyone now knows about it. It's not that he regrets that it's happening or that it's not happening. He regrets that it came out. It is real and it is happening. And I wish it wasn't, and I'm sure you wish it wasn't, but it is happening. So I want to clarify that because there still seems to be a segment of the fan base that believes this is just blown out of proportion and that, there's nothing happening. It is very real. It is very much happening. And it's not to say that things can't conclude and come to, an amicable conclusion and everyone gets back on the same page. Russell Wilson at one point looked like he might be traded this offseason, and he's not. He's a Seattle Seahawk. Sometimes these things just work themselves out, at least for a period of time. The second thing I want to go over is there also seems to be a segment of the fan base that still believes there is, why are people talking about trading Aaron Rodgers? Because even if the Packers wanted to trade Aaron Rodgers, they can't do it. They would, take this $38+ million cap hit, and there's just no way that Green Bay can do that. Well, it's half true. Yes, they would take a $38.6 million cap hit, but they very much can manage that without much trouble whatsoever. Now, if they were to do it before June 1st, they would eat that entire 38.6-ish million cap hit this year. Even then, he's set to make $37 million this year, right? So it basically costs them about $1.5 million more than what they're set to pay him right now. So a quick restructure of one contract and they can get there easily. Now, they wouldn't have any room to take back any players in that trade. It would have to all be future draft picks because they wouldn't have the cap space unless they did something big with Devontae Adams and maybe a couple other things. But they very much could do that. However, there's no reason at this point. You're not trading them prior to the draft so you can get those draft picks. There's no reason at this point in any way, shape, or form to trade him prior to June 1st. If you come to an agreement that he actually gets traded and you trade him after June 1st. And the reason that is you basically at that point would only pay $21 million against the cap this year. He was set to make $37.2. You actually save $16 million on the cap this season, actually helping Green Bay quite a bit. Now, not on the field. You just lost your star franchise, Hall of Fame MVP quarterback, which is not great. But from a salary cap standpoint, actually helps things out quite a bit. Now you might say, but Andy, then that's just going to be a huge cap hit next year. Yes, there would be. There would be a $17 million cap hit next year. And I apologize if I misspoke earlier. $21 million cap hit would be this year. They would save 16-ish million, 17 million cap hit then in 2022, which means they would save 22.6 million next year on next year's cap. So yes, 38 million total split between 2 years. He's set to make 76 million over those 2 years if he actually played. So if you trade him, you actually save quite a bit of money over these next 2 seasons. And oh, by the way, the third season, when he was owed 28.3 million, they wouldn't have to pay any of that. That would be full savings in year 3. So this idea that it's impossible to trade him and it can't happen, why are we talking about it? That is completely and unequivocally untrue. There are a variety of different ways that they could trade him, and it's almost assuredly, if that did happen, would happen after June 1st anyway, which again actually helps Green Bay from a salary cap standpoint. It doesn't cripple them at all. So how does that work? So, he would obviously, you'd save 16 million by trading him. Just hypothetically, let's say Denver's the popular team here, right? How do you put a package of players together that would work for Green Bay? I'm not saying this is a perfect package. I'm not saying this is what Green Bay would do, but I'm just saying hypothetically, Jerry Jeudy, Drew Lock, Dalton Risner, those 3 players combined would bring back about $3.5 million in salary for this season. You get probably 3 first-round picks, maybe a second-round pick as well, maybe a little less since you're taking on Jeudy, but somewhere around there, right? Probably 3 first-round picks, Jeudy, Drew Lock, Dalton Risner. All 3 of those players combined only take up about 3.5 of that 16 million you're saving. You would actually have additional money left over to go out and spend if you wanted to, or take on additional players in that trade if you wanted to go that way. There's a variety of different things that you could do. So you could quite easily put a package together. Again, let's just hypothetically say Aaron Rodgers for 3 first-round picks, Jerry Jeudy, Drew Lock, and Dalton Risner. You get a potential star wide receiver. You get a quarterback in the time being that has some upside, not close to reaching it. Doesn't look like he's going to reach it, but has some upside. Remember, Green Bay liked him in that draft. That now could come in and play now until Jordan Love is ready. You get Dalton Risner, somebody that can come in and start immediately along the offensive line. So you get 3 starters, you get 3 first-round picks in the future. It is what it is. This isn't going to be a perfect solution, right? You're trading a Hall of Fame quarterback, but you get back 3 guys that are good. You get 3 first-round picks. You save some money, and you'll be able to kind of go out and spend that next season and reevaluate where Jordan Love is, where Drew Lock is, what the quarterback situation is around the league. Can you sign someone? Can you draft someone new if you need to? There's all those things that you can work out moving forward. So there is a way to do that. Now, the other quick hullabaloo, the rumors and reports are that Rodgers is willing to come back if Brian Gutekunst is fired. I don't want to get into this too much because we just don't know the whole story here. But if that's true, personally, you can't have one person hold the franchise hostage. And I'm not saying that we don't know what happened, right? We don't know what Brian Gutekunst and the franchise may have done to Rodgers. We don't know what Rodgers may have said. But to me, that's just not something that can happen. That crippled. You might as well make Aaron Rodgers the general manager at that point, because he has full autonomy. If he can say fire the GM and you fire the GM, then what else would he not? At any point you can just say, I'm going to walk away if I don't get this. Like, it just creates an entire Pandora's box. The other question that I want to ask is, can this really be mended, right? Even if he comes back and says, yes, I'm willing to play, and I want to sign a long-term deal and be the quarterback of the Packers long-term, and the Packers give him the deal that he wants, how quick is it to mend those fences? I think it goes pretty quick. Honestly, let's be real. Brian Gutekunst and Aaron Rodgers don't really need to interact in their day-to-day almost ever. They just don't, right? And Matt LaFleur and Aaron Rodgers seem to have a great relationship. And everyone on the team doesn't really care what's going on. They just want Aaron back and to go out and compete for a Super Bowl. So I think he comes back. Maybe things are never cheery between, Aaron Rodgers and Brian Gutekunst. I don't think that really matters all that much. I just really don't. I think you can separate church and state a little bit. Front office stays there. Players and coaches, or players specifically, stay there, report to the coaches, and I think you're okay, as long as everything else works out. Now, can that happen? We'll wait and see. The one thing I don't think can happen, the more that I think about this, the one thing I don't think can happen is that Rodgers just says, I'm going to come back and play out this season, and maybe they would agree to a trade the following year or something like that. I don't think you can go into this in a lame duck sort of way. if Rodgers just comes back and plays on his current contract, these questions and the drama will continue all throughout the season, and it'll eat the team away as the season goes on. Like, you're better off probably just trading him now, because you're not going to win this year with that sort of drama. If you remember the offseason of Favre and Rodgers starting his first season, Rodgers played pretty well that year. It's not like he was completely fully ready yet, but they were 6-10 that year. Like, just, you could tell that entire organization was just completely sapped from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, from everything that happened in the offseason. If this doesn't get resolved quickly, I don't think you can go into this in a lame duck and just say we'll figure things out later. The questions will remain. I think some of the animosity will remain. So I think you either have to figure it out, let bygones be bygones, sign the long-term extension, make him the quarterback for the remainder of his career, let him retire a Packer, and have him forgive whatever happened and have the Packers forgive whatever happened and move on. Or you need to cut everything off and make the trade and get it done with now. Because I think if there's, I'm not saying Rodgers is poisoned, but if that relationship is poisoned, that's going to spread to the remainder of the team. All right, I went way too long on this. I want to talk draft. I'm sorry, but I feel like this is, again, as I mentioned the other day, the draft, especially day 3, but the draft, free agency, all of that stuff pales in comparison to what happens with Rodgers, this contract extension. I said that before all of this firestorm, and now it even is more so. So obviously still the most pressing need. Now, let's talk about draft. Let's talk about day 3. And the biggest thing I want to go over here, and the biggest thing I want to discuss here, is that what positions Green Bay addresses on day 3, and ultimately like the players that they pick and stuff like that, it doesn't matter. All right. And you might say, what do you mean it doesn't matter? If you're saying they had to address defensive line and they should have got a linebacker on day 3, they should have got more than one receiver, like things like that. It does not matter. In the last 10 years, and this is pretty consistent league-wide, but let's look at the Packers the last 10 years on day 3 of the draft. These are the best players that they've got. And last year, as of right now, John Runyon Jr. The year before, Kingsley Keke. MVS the year before that. In 2017, good hits in the second round in Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams. The year before that, Blake Martinez and Dean Lowry. 2015, they didn't hit on anyone. 2014, Corey Linsley. 2013, Micah Hyde. 2012, Mike Daniels. And 2011, if you want to credit it, Lawrence Guy, who's had a fantastic career, just never with Green Bay. So if you want to count Lawrence Guy, they've basically hit on 11 guys, and that's including Kingsley Keke, John Runyon, and Lawrence Guy, right? Which Keke and Runyon, we just don't know at this point. And Lawrence Guy never played, I don't think, actually a regular season snap for Green Bay. Even if you want to give them those guys, 11 players in 10 years that were actually solid, consistent contributors. That's it. That's 11 in 10 years. That's 1 per draft. My point being, you are just hoping and praying you take the best players that are possibly there that you think could potentially hit, and you're hoping to get one of them right. And if you do really well, you get 2 of them right. So saying we had to get a defensive lineman so that on day 3 of the draft so we could fill that out because we don't have the depth on defensive line. If you can't just go in and expect these players to come in and play. Like I said, most of these guys are going to bust. Some of them may not make the 53-man roster. Just last year, Jake Hansen didn't even make the 53-man roster going into the regular season. You just take anyone that you can cling on to that you think has a chance to be a player, maybe help you on special teams, and down the line be somebody that can actually stick around. It doesn't happen very often, and if you hit on one of them, you've done a good job. So don't worry about positions, just worry about trying to find one of these players that hopefully will hit. So who do they ultimately end up with? They get Royce Newman in the 4th round, guard tackle out of Ole Miss, TJ Slayton, defensive tackle out of Florida, Shamar Jean-Charles, defensive back out of Appalachian State, Cole Van Lanen, of course, the local product, Bayport High School, University of Wisconsin in the 6th round, offensive lineman, Isaiah McDuffie, linebacker from Boston College, played with A.J. Dillon, and then Kylan Hill, running back out of Mississippi State. Personally, one of my favorite picks for Green Bay in this draft, Kylan Hill, running back, Mississippi State, apparently has, he's had some kind of clashes with coaches and things like that. They felt pretty good about the character and the type of player that he is, the type of person that he is. Remember, Green Bay doesn't really take character chances all that often, so they probably felt pretty damn good about it. But really fun player, can cut on a dime, shows some power, shows some speed, shows good athleticism. I think a player fans are going to fall in love with when they start seeing the highlights and the tape really quick. And I think he has, right now, I would, sorry, Patrick Taylor just came on, who I really like as a player. But if I were a betting man today, Kylan Hill to me would be the favorite to win that number 3 running back spot. Another thing that Green Bay did on, during this draft and what they were able to accomplish, for the 4th time in 5 years, they had a triple down on a given position. Of course, 2017, the running backs, Jones, Williams, and Devontae Mays. 2018, the receivers, Jamon Moore, EQ, and MVS. Just last year, the interior offensive linemen, John Runyon Jr., Jake Hansen, Simon Stepaniak. And then this year, Myers, Newman, and Van Lanen across the offensive line again. And interestingly enough, they spent 3, basically day 3 picks, on interior offensive linemen a season ago. They probably get 3 more guys that project on the interior of the offensive line this year. Now, they all have versatility. Van Lanen and Newman specifically might be able to play some tackle. Maybe John Runyon Jr. can play some tackle, but all 6 probably, kind of are looking more towards inside type players. But one thing that I'll say about the philosophy here and getting these offensive linemen, I love drafting as many offensive linemen as you can find, and especially if you can find good ones. And the reason being, if you've got a 53-man roster, a lot of times teams will keep up to 10 offensive linemen. Take away the 3 specialists, 1 out of every 5 non-specialist players on your team is an offensive lineman. Like, that is a huge portion of your roster that potentially takes up the offensive line. 20% potentially. So getting more offensive linemen, there's just more of those roster spots that are on the team. A couple other things that, again, why I really think it makes sense to value offensive line in the draft. Starters don't rotate on the offensive line. Those 5 guys play every snap over and over and over and over. If you pick a nose tackle, and I'm just using TJ Slayton here as an example, right? He's more of a run-stuffing nose tackle. He's only going to be on rundowns, and he's only going to be, maybe on first down and obvious rundowns, goal line situations. That might amount to 15 snaps a game. Like, if he's awesome, and if he's great, and he's a really good run defender, you might only get 15 snaps. He's not playing teams, right? Maybe you can put him on like a, kick block team or something like that. But for the most part, you might get 15, 16 snaps out of him at most, even if he's great. Which is why, like, people saying, well, you need to sign Snacks Harrison or one of these big run-stuffing tackles. If they can't rush the passer and, they can't play teams, they're going to play 15, 16 snaps. You're not going to get a huge return on investment. Along the offensive line, you get a huge return on investment if you can turn this into a starter because they do not come off the field. They don't rotate. Quarterback, offensive lineman, maybe 1 inside linebacker, 2 corners, 2 safeties. Like, there's a handful of players that stay on the field for every snap, but all 5 offensive linemen are in that category. It also is the one position of the group that, doesn't rotate that matters on every single play. You can say, well, what about quarterback? Now, if the quarterback's doing a bunch of snap stuff, yes. And I'm certainly not saying that offensive line is more important than quarterback. I'm not. But offensive line matters every single time they're on the field. For a quarterback, if you run the football, he hands off and the quarterback's done. What he did on that play does not matter, again, unless he did something pre-snap to check to it. All right, whatever he did, it didn't matter. Wide receivers might matter a little bit depending on if they're blocking to their side, but they might just be running a dummy route as well. Tight ends might run, routes to the outside, when it's a pass to the other side. Like, same thing on the defensive side of the ball. There are plays that just don't matter when you're on the field. When you're an offensive lineman, every single play matters. If it's a run, what you do very much matters. If it's a pass, what you do very much matters. Maybe every so often, if it's like a smoke screen to the outside, what the offensive line does doesn't matter. Like, they might just take the snap, it's outside, it's just one-on-one on the outside for 5 yards, and the offensive line basically got to play off. That's it. For the most part, they matter on every play that they're on the field. So you're looking at a position that has 1 out of every 5 players on the team is an offensive lineman. The starters never rotate. They play every single play. And again, it's a position that matters every single time they're on the field. So I love stacking a draft for offensive line because you get more return on investment for your investment in draft picks than any other position. So I know people might say, well, they just took 3 last year. Now they took 3 more this year. How are they going to, they'll make it work. And Matt LaFleur is maybe more aggressive than any other coach in getting his best 5 offensive linemen on the field and figuring the rest out later. It worked with great success a season ago. He's not afraid to move people around. He got guys with more versatility this year, and I liked what they did attacking that offensive line position throughout the draft. So last but not least, what they kind of accomplished here, the needs were checked, right? They got 3 offensive linemen, 2 cornerbacks, including a first rounder, a run stopping, not both simultaneously, a defensive tackle, a gadget slot wide receiver that has kick return and punt return ability, which is another huge need that this team had. The Corey Linsley replacement with Josh Myers, and they built depth throughout their team. So, boxes checked. Maybe they didn't get the top tier inside linebacker. They hit one on day 3. We'll see what happens there. But overall, I thought they did a good job of finding talent and addressing the needs that they had without reaching for those specific needs. So day 1, really thought Stokes was a solid pick. I'm excited to watch him a little bit more. Really, really liked day 2. I thought Josh Myers and Amari Rodgers was a great day 2. Day 3 to be determined. I'm really looking forward to watching these guys a little bit more to see how they, pop on tape, which ones I think could potentially be something exciting. I'm really, really interested in TJ Slayton as a run-stopping defensive tackle, and really interested, just overall to see which one of these players pops off on tape. So that is going to do it for me today. Thank you as always for joining me. Sorry I went a little long on Rodgers and a little less on draft, but trust me, I will be breaking down all of these picks very, very soon right here on the Pack a Day podcast on YouTube. So make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure to check out today's audio version. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.